Good afternoon, members of the MAG Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee. This meeting is now called to order. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. For those participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a request to speak card located on the meeting room counter and give it to MAG staff. If you parked in the garage, parking validators are available on the meeting room counter. If you purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available from MAG staff. We will now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, when I call your name, please respond. Stan Ballone, Dave Berry, Walter Bouchard, Kim Butler.
Here.
Thank you. Derek Castaneda, Mike Chamberlain.
Here.
Thank you. Beverly Chanowski.
Here.
Thank you. Sam Brown. Sam Brown is proxy for Tim Connor.
Present.
Thank you. Mike Denby. Ryan Cavalier as proxy for Deb Ferraro.
Here.
Thank you, Ryan. Robert Forrest. Jonathan Fudge.
Present.
Thank you. Ron Gritman. Rhonda Humbles.
Here.
Thank you. Anu Jain.
Here.
Thank you. Hondo Judd. Spencer Camps. Aaron Cooper. William Loper.
Present.
Thank you. Kelly McKenzie. J.C. Porter. Matt Potzler is proxy for Nancy Allen.
Here.
Thank you. Monica Rabb.
Present.
Thank you. Megan Sheldon.
Present.
Thank you. John Sherrill.
Present.
Thank you. Susie Stevens. Catrice Swenson. Steve Trussell. Robert Vondenacker.
Present.
Thank you. Kristen Watt.
Present.
Thank you. Rick Williams.
I'm here.
Thank you. Michelle Wilson.
Present.
Thank you. John Woods.
Present.
Thank you. Adelia Perez. Alan Hansen as proxy for Romare Truly.
Here.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone? Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Our next item is call to the audience. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for call to the audience unless the chair requests an exception to this limit. I have received one request to speak card for call to the audience. So Jeff Caldwell, come up, and I know you have several different sections. Yeah, you just go ahead and sit here. And so I'll give you a little bit of more latitude, but let's keep that in mind. Thank you.
Chair, members, thank you very much for this opportunity. It is my opinion that Maricopa County Association of Governments is an unelected body. That is a fact. And so it's my opinion that it does not operate as a real government entity. It should be abolished as being a government entity and returned to a traditional nonprofit. So with that, we Maricopa County residents do not support road diets. We don't like when traffic lanes are reduced in order to implement bus rapid transit, light rail, or bike lanes. These policies put small businesses out of business during construction. They increase crashes, serious injuries, and actually increase pollution. It's going to be discussed today that we've reduced our carbon emissions, but yet we still have ozone increasing. And we just went through a horrific summer of tremendous amounts of heat, and we're still reducing our carbon emissions. Public transit at peak times is at 80% occupancy. During non-peak times, it's not utilized very frequently. And so I think it's important to recognize that even when we do implement road diets to try and get people off of cars to utilize the public transit, it's not being utilized. We just need to stop propping up failing industries. MAG with Prop 400 is utilizing that money in order to fund the Valley Metro, which is losing money. And these policies do not generate the results that the residents want to see. As I said, we still have increased ozone and higher temperatures. The mayor of Phoenix, Kate Gallego, is the chair of MAG, and she has promised to not implement banning meat or dairy products. So please also do not implement policies that will negatively impact the meat industry or subsidize vegetable growers over meat producers. So item 7 is for information only. I kind of touched on this. It's the EPA finding failure to submit the state implementation plans. The EPA is now threatening to take away our highway funds. This is a huge problem. Maricopa County and the mayor of Phoenix were both ahead of the EPA in trying to get them to communicate with us in order to put together a plan that actually recognizes that we are reducing our pollution, but ozone is increasing. So with the EPA threatening to take away our funding due to their unobtainable goals, we may be able to just move forward with allowing for different blends of gasoline. I know that that's a hot topic right now, but it will help reduce the cost of transportation and help with the inflation problems that we see. But another thing that we could do through MAG is lobby our state legislature and the federal government to deregulate hemp. The world's largest hempcrete building is 12 stories tall, and it's actually carbon negative. It's not carbon neutral. It absorbs more carbon than is put out. And then on number 8, Valley Metro 2023 Transportation Demand Management Survey results. Again, please stop implementing road diets, the bus rapid transit, expanding light rail. These policies put small businesses out of business, increase crashes. So I've already touched on that. And I want to apply that section again to the Valley Metro. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't think there's any other speak cards here physically. Okay. So MAG also provides the opportunity for members of the public to submit written comments via the MAG website. Any comments received 2 hours prior to the meeting have been shared with the committee members in advance of the meeting for consideration and will be included in the formal meeting minutes. Staff, have we received any online written comments for the call to the audience?
Madam Chair, we received 2 online written comments for agenda item 2, which have been provided to the committee members in advance of the meeting for consideration and will be included in the formal minutes of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And so you can refer to your packets for those. Our next item, number 3, is approval of the August 24th, 2023 meeting minutes. Before we move on, is there any discussion? Prior to the approval, do we have any members of the public who wish to comment on agenda item number 3? I have not received any requests to speak for this agenda item. And have we received any written comments on this?
Madam Chair, no written comments were received for agenda item 3.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the August 24th, 2023 meeting minutes?
Madam Chair, this is Megan Sheldon, City of Glendale. I move to approve the meeting minutes for August 24th, 2023.
And do we have a second?
This is John Sherrill, City of Chandler. I second the motion.
Okay, we will have those participating in the meeting online now take part in the voice vote by turning your cameras on and unmuting your audio. So we need to see your faces of everyone participating in the voice vote. This is to speed up the voting process. For those who cannot or do not want to turn on their cameras, staff will conduct a roll call vote. Staff will only call on those virtual participants who did not turn on your cameras. So members, please leave on your cameras until the whole roll call vote is done, even after you say aye, because they're going to have to see your faces. If you turn your cameras off, then all the names move around and they can't count you. So leave your cameras on even after you say aye until I tell you to go ahead and turn your cameras off. So now we will take a voice vote of those in the room and those online. So those in favor, say aye.
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 Keep your cameras on. Those opposed, say nay. Those who wish to abstain from, the vote, say abstain. Okay, staff.
This is Sam Brown. I am remote. My camera is somewhere else.
That's-
I abstain.
Well, thank you very much, Sam. So staff can, they'll take a roll call of those members participating virtually who did not turn their camera on. So keep your cameras on for a minute so they can see all the names. And while they're counting, I forgot to mention that we have a motion from Megan and a second from John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll now do a roll call vote. Anu Jane. How do you vote on the meeting minutes?
It's not showing.
I'm sorry, we didn't hear. Sam Brown,
I abstain.
thank you. Michelle Wilson,
Aye.
thank you. William Loper,
Aye.
Alan Henson. I'm sorry, strike that. Okay, thank you very much. Madam Chair, we have 20 ayes and 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you very much. You can turn your cameras off now if you so wish. And the motion is approved. On to item number 4, which is the draft MAG 2022 inventory of unpaved roads, and Elias Toon from MAG will discuss that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So some background on this item. Back in 2007, the MAG Regional Council approved additional items to the suggested list of measures to reduce PM10 for the Maricopa County PM10 non-attainment area. One of the measures on that was for MAG to develop an unpaved road inventory of the Maricopa County PM10 non-attainment area. The intended use of this emission inventory was to measure progress on eliminating unpaved roads within the non-attainment area. The initial unpaved road inventory was created and completed in November of 2009. This graphic here shows the flow of how the annual inventory is updated. So data from MAG member agencies are contacted and included, information from CMAQ and the TIP on paving data, aerial analyses are performed on changes to unpaved roads, and that is updated and disseminated and then finally finalized by MAG staff. Next slide, please. Some of the unpaved roads that aren't included in this inventory are listed here. Those include things such as alleys, canal roads, easements, and those are not included in this inventory. Next slide, please. So this table here shows the totals for the year 2022. It has both public and private roads with different jurisdictions here within the non-attainment area, allocated to cities, towns, unincorporated areas, federal lands, and native nations. The total unpaved roads that still exist in 2022 within the Maricopa PM10 non-attainment area is 1,270 miles. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, the intention of this inventory is to measure progress on eliminating these unpaved roads. So when we compare it back to that initial inventory from November 2009, we can see that there's been a decrease of 289 miles of public unpaved roads. So these, some of the primary drivers of this decrease are the paving of those unpaved roads. So those roads have been paved. Those roads may have been closed. And also some of those roads were previously classified as public roads, but were actually private roads. They've been transferred to the other category. And lastly, the private unpaved roads, there's been a decrease of 325 miles over this time period, and most of those are attributed to paving projects. Here we have a graphic that shows our online GIS webpage that shows where these roads are located within the non-attainment area. So the yellow boundary there is going to show the outline of the Maricopa PM10 non-attainment area. And within that, you can see the lines that are blue and red. So blue are going to represent public unpaved roads, and red are going to represent private unpaved roads. So as you can see, there's been a lot of great progress in kind of the urban core of eliminating these unpaved roads, where the bulk of the unpaved roads kind of on the outside boundary, which generally represent newer developments and newer communities here in the valley. This tool is available online for anybody to go and look at. And so as we move into 2023, we will be going through this update process again, which requires us to go out and solicit updates from MAG member agencies on progress that's been made on these roads. So this tool is available. And so look out next year for email from MAG staff, which will be requesting MAG member agencies to review over this data set, look to see if there's been any changes to these roads, any misclassifications, and we'll continue to update the inventory and update the committee on the progress on this item. Next slide, please. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. This item is for information and discussion. Is there any questions or comments from the MAG member agencies? Okay, great. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 5, which is the draft 2023 5% particulate plan for PM10 for the West Pinal County non-attainment area. And Elias Toon from MAG will be providing the presentation. This item is for information, discussion, and recommendation to adopt the draft 2023 5% particulate plan for PM10 for the West Pinal County non-attainment area. And we did have a request to speak on this. Do we want to do it before or after? After? Okay, we'll do that after your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Next slide, please. So to give some historical background on this item, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency designated the West Pinal County PM10 non-attainment area as a moderate area back in 2012. Originally, the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality was the agency that was certified to plan for this area. And so they developed a state implementation plan revision for this area, and it was submitted in 2015 for this area. Between this time, the Arizona governor at the time switched his certification for which agency was supposed to plan for this, and switched it from the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, and identified MAG would develop future plans for this area if necessary. On June 24th, 2020, EPA determined that the area had failed to attain the PM10 standard and bumped the area up and reclassified it to a serious area. I've included over here on the right-hand side an image that shows the boundaries of the non-attainment area. And so the non-attainment area generally covers Santan Valley, Florence, Eloy, Casa Grande, and Maricopa, with cutouts for native nation lands to the north and northwest. Next slide, please. So after the certification was switched to the Maricopa Association of Governments, in 2022, ADQ submitted on our behalf a serious area plan for the area. However, the attainment date for this plan was the end of the year, December 31st, 2022, and control measures were not able to be in place in time to affect the exceedances in the area. So on July 21st of this year, EPA determined that based off of quality assured data from the previous year, that the area had failed to attain the PM10 standard. This determination by EPA triggered a new state implementation plan revision requirement under the Clean Air Act with a deadline of December 31st of this year. Next slide, please. So an overview of the items that are required under a 5% plan include a demonstration of expeditious attainment of the PM10 standard at the monitors within the area. It also requires a demonstration of 5% annual reductions in PM10 emissions within the area from the base emission inventory year to the attainment year. And the plan is also required to meet any outstanding state implementation plan requirements for this area. That includes both moderate and serious area requirements. So for some of those outstanding requirements, that includes the requirement to demonstrate the implementation of best available control measures for serious air requirements. And it also still includes the requirement to provide for contingency measures, which is also addressed in this plan. Next slide, please. I've also included here a graphic that shows the outline of Pinal County generally in yellow, and then has the boundary of the West Pinal County Serious PM10 non-attainment area in blue, with red icons here, which represent the locations of the PM10 air quality monitors within the non-attainment area. Next slide, please. So this graph here shows those different monitors we were just looking at and the exceedances over the time period from 2016 to 2022. As can be seen here, there's been great progress made at reducing the number of exceedances over time from 2016 to 2022. And you can also note that generally the most problematic monitor in the area has historically been the Hidden Valley monitor, where we continue to see the most exceedances, both standard and high wind dust event exceedances. Next slide, please. This graph here shows the 2017 base year annual PM10 emission inventory for the non-attainment area. This shows where the emissions are generally coming from. And as you can see in here, the bulk of the emissions in the area are coming from unpaved roads. So those include unpaved agricultural roads, unpaved private roads, and unpaved public roads, for a total of 41,168 across the entire area for the inventory. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, the plan is required to demonstrate the implementation of best available control measures. And so for the previous 2022 serious area plan, an extensive review of available PM10 control measures was conducted. And from that review, 70 candidate measures were identified and included on a suggested list of measures that went out to implementing entities for consideration. From that list, regulations have been promulgated to implement 61 of those 70 suggested measures by the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality and the Pinal County Air Quality Control District. These regulations that represent BACM have been referenced in the 2023 5% particulate plan. These enacted measures meet the BACM requirement and are sufficient to demonstrate the attainment of the PM10 standard by December 31st, 2026, which is the most expeditious date possible. Next slide. This graph here demonstrates the 2026 inventory after the implementation of those best available control measures. As you can see at the top there, the total inventory has shrunk from 41,000 tons approximately down to 34,000 tons approximately. The unpaved roads still remain the largest slice of the pie for this graph, but there has been great progress with those implementation of those measures. Next slide, please. To touch on the attainment modeling that was performed for this, the attainment modeling identified 8 selected design days that were included in the modeling to demonstrate if the area could attain by December 31st, 2026. The data is included here in this table. The 8 days were allocated across 3 different monitors, so Hidden Valley, Pinal County Housing, and Stanfield. And those exceedance type days represent different scenarios such as low wind, elevated wind, or elevated wind thunderstorm exceedance types. As you can see in that far right-hand column, the PM10 standard that the model would need to show attainment is 150 micrograms per cubic meter. And on these 8 selected design days, the model was able to demonstrate that all of these days were below that 150 microgram per cubic meter threshold. Next slide, please. The other element that I discussed that needs to be demonstrated in this plan are 5% annual emission reductions across the area from the base emission inventory year to the attainment year. In this top table, you can see that since the plan is going to be submitted at the end of this year, the 3 years that are between now and 2026 are 2024, 2025, and 2026. This table shows how the total emissions from 2017 are taken and multiplied by that 5%, which is cumulative over the 3 years, to identify how many annual emission reductions are necessary. Those are then subtracted from the 2017 base year and provide the benchmark in which to determine if we are able to demonstrate that there are sufficient emission reductions to meet that annual reduction requirement. Fortunately for this plan, the existing emission reductions that were already within the 2022 Serious Area Plan are sufficient to demonstrate this. So this plan includes no additional control measures above and beyond what has already been approved in the 2022 Serious Area Plan. And as you can see in the very bottom right-hand corner of the table is at the end of 2026, there is still a little bit of margin of excess benefit left over in the area, even after the 5% annual reductions. Next slide, please. As I also touched on previously, the plan is required to identify contingency measures in case the area fails to attain the standard by its attainment date. So EPA has recommended that the contingencies measures provide emission reductions equivalent to 1 year's worth of progress, which for this plan is 657 tons. The 2023 particular plan includes a contingency measure, which is the reduction of the speed limit on public unpaved roads from 25 miles per hour to 15 miles per hour. In case the area doesn't attain. And for this, the PM10 emission reductions associated with this measure are 951 tons in the year 2027, which meets that target value of 657 tons. Next slide, please. The plan also identifies the motor vehicle emission budget for transportation conformity purposes. The motor vehicle emission budget includes PM10 emissions from exhaust, tire, and brake wear, road construction, paved road dust, and unpaved road dust. And for this plan, the 2 motor vehicle emission budgets are for 2023 and 2026, which have identified 45.0 metric tons per day and 42.5 metric tons per day, respectively, for those budgets. For the public comment period, no requests for a public hearing were received during the 30-day review period that ran from September 4th, 2023 to October 5th, 2023. We did receive 2 comment letters from the Arizona Cotton Growers Association on behalf of the Arizona Governor's Agricultural Best Management Practices Committee and the Arizona Farm Bureau Federation, and those were received on October 5th, 2023. I will now read those comments that we received and go over the agency's response to those comments. Next slide, please. So the first comment is from JD Ronan from the Arizona Cotton Growers Association on behalf of Paco Ollerton of the Arizona Governor's Agricultural Best Management Practices Committee. Comment: the Governor's Agricultural Best Management Ag BMP Committee is responsible for developing and approving dust controlling methods for farming and other agricultural activities. Since its creation in 1998, the Ag BMP Committee and program has helped lessen the negative impacts of particulate matter on public health and welfare. The agriculture industry generates over $23.3 billion in economic impact to the state and operationally may produce dust while disturbing soil in the arid regions of the state, also known as particulate matter, PM, in regulatory terms. The Ag BMP Committee has collaboratively worked to address and develop best management practices that are sustainable and feasible for farmers within PM10 non-attainment areas. The committee representatives from the agricultural sectors participate to ensure that agriculture has a voice in air quality regulations, protecting the economic viability of our industry to continue producing food and fiber for our state and the county. On behalf of the Agricultural Best Management Practices Committee, Ag BMP Committee, the Arizona Cotton Growers Association appreciates the opportunity to provide comments on the Maricopa Association of Governments, MAG, Draft 2023 5% Particulate Plan for PM10 for the West Pinal County non-attainment area draft. Response. The Maricopa Association of Governments respects and acknowledges the work the Governor's Agricultural Best Management Practices, Ag BMP Committee, has performed in developing and approving dust controlling methods for reducing PM10 emissions from farming and other agricultural activities in Maricopa and Pinal counties. Next slide, please. Comments continued. Comment. The following comments and concerns rose at the Ag BMP Committee meeting on September 27, 2023 to discuss the draft. The primary concern with the 2017 annual PM10 emissions inventory and the percentage of emissions attributed to unpaved roads, which includes agricultural unpaved roads. In past PM10 annual emission inventories, 23% was attributed to unpaved roads and 68% was attributed to windblown dust sources. In the 2026 controlled annual emission inventory, windblown dust emissions are now 9%, while unpaved roads account for 72% of the emissions inventory. Unpaved agricultural roads make up nearly 25% of that total. Essentially, agricultural unpaved road emissions are now equivalent to what was once the total of all unpaved road emissions. Response. In the 2015 West Pinal Moderate PM10 Non-Attainment Area State Implementation Plan, the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, ADEQ, developed annual PM10 emissions inventory for years 2008 and 2018 for the West Pinal County non-attainment area. For the 2008 annual PM10 emission inventory, unpaved roads were calculated to comprise 32% of the inventory, and windblown dust emissions were calculated to be 52% of the inventory. For historical reference, this methodology used to calculate the 2008 annual PM10 emission inventory has been included in Appendix A, Exhibit 1 of the Draft 2023 5% Particulate Plan for PM10 for the West Pinal County non-attainment area 2023 5% Plan. Upon review of the windblown dust methodologies used to create the 2008 inventory, the methodology used to calculate the windblown dust PM10 emissions were found to be overestimated on an annual basis. For the 2023 5% plan, the methodology for calculation of annual PM10 windblown dust emissions for the 2017 base year is based on the EPA-approved methodology used in the Maricopa PM10 non-attainment area. This methodology scales windblown dust concentrations when wind speeds are below 12 miles per hour. This methodology scales windblown dust PM10 emission estimates based on the monitored and observed ratio of PM10 concentrations when wind speeds are at or above 12 miles per hour to PM10 concentrations when wind speeds are below 12 miles per hour. This methodology is detailed on pages 40 and 41 on Appendix A, Exhibit 1 of the Draft 2023 5% Plan. Using this methodology, in 2017, only approximately 9% of monitored PM10 concentrations are associated with wind speeds at or above 12 miles per hour, the wind speed at which windblown dust emissions begin. The vast majority, approximately 91% of monitored and annual PM10 concentrations occur under low wind, less than 12 mile per hour conditions. Table 1 below shows that while the relative percentages of PM10 emissions from unpaved roads and windblown dust emissions have changed from the 2008 to the 2017 emission inventory, the annual emissions associated with unpaved agricultural roads, unpaved public roads, and unpaved trails have all decreased. The only unpaved road type to see an increase in emissions between the 2008 and 2017 emissions inventories was the unpaved private roads category. The methodology used to calculate annual unpaved road PM10 emissions is described in detail on pages 58 through 64 of Appendix A, Exhibit 1 of the Draft 2023 5% Plan. Next slide, please. The reference table is included here. Next slide, please. Comment continued. Comment. The producers in Pinal County have made great strides for dust suppression on unpaved agricultural roads, including watering roads, reducing vehicle speed, spreading organic material and gravel, and adding soil stabilizers to roadways, etc. Although the modeling appears not to reflect the efforts made within Category 4 commercial farm mitigations. Response. In the 2023 5% plan, PM10 emissions reduction credits for the increase in controls required on unpaved agricultural roads is modeled and accounted for in the 2026 controlled inventory year. The rules adopted by the Ag BMP Committee in 2021 required the implementation of 2 best management practices for commercial farm roads, an increase from the previously required 1 best management practice. As detailed on page 3-32 of the technical support document for the 2023 5% plan, Appendix B, Exhibit 1, the control effectiveness of the implementation of 1 BMP on unpaved agricultural roads in the 2017 base year is estimated to be 28.3%. In the 2026 controlled inventory year, the implementation of 2 BMPs results in a control effectiveness of 46.8%. The 2017 annual PM10 emissions for unpaved agricultural roads are 10,150 tons per year. In 2026, the annual PM10 emissions from unpaved agricultural roads are 6,279 tons per year, which is a 38% reduction in annual PM10 emissions from 2017. Next slide, please. Comment continued. The committee requests the methodology in the development of the emissions inventory along with the definitions, examples, locations of each emissions category. Response. Chapter 3 and Appendix A, Exhibit 1 of the draft 2023 5% particulate plan for PM10 for the West Pinal County non-attainment area detail the methodology used to develop the 2017 base year PM10 emissions inventory for the West Pinal County series PM10 non-attainment area. Exhibit A, Appendix A, Exhibit 1. Descriptions and methodologies for the creation of 2017 annual PM10 emissions from point sources, non-point sources, non-road mobile sources, and on-road mobile sources are provided in Appendix A, Exhibit 1 of the draft 2023 5% plan on pages 9, 13, 43, and 49, respectively. The descriptions and methodologies for the creation of 2026 controlled annual PM10 inventory for each PM10 emission source category are provided in Chapter 3 of the technical support document for the 5% plan, Appendix B, Exhibit 1. Next slide, please. Comment continued. Comment. Additionally, there was a concern regarding how fugitive dust from solar installation sites in the non-attainment areas was being calculated. There has been a significant increase in the amount of land converted to solar sites with additional installations planned. And while construction activity PM10 regulations are in place during the construction of these sites, how emissions are evaluated or regulated once the construction and installation are complete is unclear. The committee urges MAG and the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality to examine how dust emissions are monitored or controlled once the solar site installation is complete. Response. The contractors / owners of solar power plant construction projects are subject to the recently adopted Pinal County Air Quality Control District PCA-QCD construction site fugitive dust requirements until the completion of the project. After the project is complete, a solar power plant would be subject to the open area / vacant lots stabilization and control measures requirements listed under PCA-QCD Code of Regulations, Section 4-1-030.3. Next slide, please. Comments continued. Comment. We would like to request that MAG engage the Ag BMP Committee and all stakeholders when developing plans whose operations will be directly impacted by the implementation. Response. The Maricopa Association of Governments remains committed to continued engagement with the Ag BMP Committee and all interested stakeholders when developing state implementation plan revisions for particular matter for submission to the Environmental Protection Agency. Next slide. The next set of comments are from Stephanie Smallhouse, Arizona Farm Bureau Federation. Comment. The Arizona Farm Bureau Federation is a grassroots organization made up of farmers and ranchers from across the state. Our industry generates over $23.3 billion in economic impact to the state. More importantly than that, our farmers and ranchers produce food and fiber, the very basics in life we need to survive. The 3 key elements to growing our food are sunlight, water, and soil. Food and fiber cannot be produced without disturbing the soil and creating dust in the arid Southwest, also known as particulate matter, PM, in regulatory terms. We, along with the Maricopa County Farm Bureau and Pinal County Farm Bureau, appreciate the opportunity to provide comments on the Maricopa Association of Governments, MAG, Draft 2023 5% Particulate Plan for PM10 for the West Pinal County Non-Attainment Area Draft. Our comments highlight and support the concerns raised by the Agricultural Best Management Practices Committee, AgBMP Committee, during their September 27th, 2023 meeting to discuss the draft. Their primary concern was the 2017 PM10 annual emissions inventory and the percentage of emissions attributed to unpaved roads, which includes agricultural unpaved roads. In past PM10 annual emission inventories, 23% was attributed to unpaved roads and 68% was attributed to windblown dust sources. In the current inventory, windblown dust emissions are now 9%, while unpaved roads account for 72% of the emissions inventory. Unpaved agricultural roads make up nearly 25% of that total. Essentially, agricultural unpaved roads emissions are now equivalent to what was once the total of all unpaved road emissions. Response. In the 2015 West Pinal Moderate PM10 Non-Attainment Area State Implementation Plan, the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, ADQ, developed annual PM10 emission inventories for years 2008 and 2018 for the West Pinal County Non-Attainment Area. For the 2008 annual PM10 emission inventory, unpaved roads were calculated to comprise 32% of the inventory, and windblown dust emissions were calculated to be 52% of the inventory. For historical reference, this methodology used to calculate the 2008 annual PM10 emission inventory has been included in Appendix A, Exhibit 1 of the draft 2023 5% particulate plan for PM10 for the West Pinal County Non-Attainment Area 2023 5% plan. Upon review of the windblown dust methodologies used to create the 2008 inventory, the methodology used to calculate the windblown dust PM10 emissions were found to be overestimated on an annual basis. For the 2023 5% plan, the methodology for calculation of annual PM10 windblown dust emissions for the 2017 base year is based on the EPA-approved methodology used in the Maricopa PM10 non-attainment area. This methodology scales windblown dust PM10 emission estimates based on the monitored and observed ratio of PM10 concentrations when wind speeds are at or above 12 miles per hour to PM10 concentrations when wind speeds are below 12 miles per hour. This methodology is detailed on pages 40 and 41 on Appendix A, Exhibit 1 of the draft 2023 5% plan. Using this methodology, in 2017, only approximately 9% of monitored PM10 concentrations are associated with wind speeds at or above 12 miles per hour, the wind speed at which windblown dust emissions begin. The vast majority, approximately 91% of monitored annual PM10 concentrations occur under low wind, less than 12 mile per hour conditions. Table 2 below shows that while the relative percentages of PM10 emissions from unpaved roads and windblown dust have changed from the 2008 to the 2017 emission inventory, the annual emissions associated with unpaved agricultural roads, unpaved public roads, and unpaved trails have all decreased. The only unpaved road type to see an increase in emissions between 2008 and 2017 emission inventories was the unpaved private roads category. The methodology used to calculate annual unpaved road PM10 emissions is described in detail on pages 58 through 64 of Appendix A, Exhibit 1 of the draft 2023 5% plan. Next slide, please. Table 2 is included here for reference. Next slide, please. Comment continued. There were also questions from the committee members regarding private unpaved roads that attribute 31.5% and how these roads are defined and identified. The committee is asking MAG for clarification regarding the above issues. Response. Private unpaved roads were identified and defined by the Pinal County Air Quality Control District as explained on pages 61 and 62 of the 2017 base year PM10 emissions inventory for the West Pinal County Serious PM10 non-attainment area, Appendix A, Exhibit 1. Private unpaved roads include the subcategories of non-irrigation roads, principal and secondary canal roads, and alleys. Unpaved agricultural or commercial farm roads are not a part of the private unpaved road category and are addressed separately. Next slide, please. Comment continued. There was also discussion by the committee regarding solar installations in the non-attainment area and whether PM10 emissions were being evaluated from these sites. There has been a significant increase in the amount of land converted to solar sites with additional installations planned for the future. Although construction activity PM10 regulations are in place during the construction of these sites, how are emissions evaluated or regulated once the construction and installation are complete? It is unclear how dust emissions are monitored or controlled once the installation is complete. Response. The contractors/owners of the solar power plant construction projects are subject to the recently adopted Pinal County Air Quality Control District, PCAQCD, construction site fugitive dust requirements until the completion of the project. After the project is complete, a solar power plant would be subject to the open areas, vacant lot stabilization and control measure requirements listed under PCAQCD Code of Regulations Section 4-1-030.3. Next slide, please. Comments continued. Comment. The AgBMP committee has worked for many years to address and develop best management practices that are feasible and economically viable for the agricultural operators within PM10 non-attainment areas. We appreciate their work that contributed to the draft and echo the remaining concerns with the document. Response. The Maricopa Association of Governments respects and acknowledges the work the governor's agricultural best management practices, AgBMP committee, has performed in developing and approving dust controlling methods for reducing PM10 emissions from farming and other agricultural activities in Maricopa and Pinal counties. Next slide, and comments. So looking at the project timeline, we can see here circled in red, the phase that we're currently in is the Air Quality Technical Advisory Plan recommendation phase. I've also included over here on the right-hand side some important dates of the various committees that this plan could move on to if this committee recommends the action to move forward. Next slide, please. If anybody has any questions, I can answer those. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Elias. I don't know that you all could see, but he read all that teeny tiny font, which I didn't even know existed, without a magnifying glass. So great job there, Elias. So at this point, is there any discussion from the MAG members? I just want to say that Queen Creek has the great joy of being both in the Maricopa County non-attainment area and the West Pinal County non-attainment area. I think one of the only communities that gets to be in both. So, we're excited. But since we're already doing those activities in Maricopa, it doesn't really matter. But I know just from personal experience that Pinal is working hard on those unpaved roads and getting those all chip sealed or paved, as we could see from some of that reduction of both public and private roads. So any other comments from the group? Questions? Okay, so prior to taking a vote on agenda item number 5, do we have any members of the public who wish to comment on agenda item number 5? And we do have the one request to speak card. And so Jeff Caldwell will ask you to come back up. And so you do have 3 minutes on this one, okay?
Chair, members, thank you. That was a very informative presentation. I'm glad that we were given the opportunity to give public comment after. So one thing that I have a concern with is potential regulations that might be put on businesses. I think that was kind of touched on without strictly saying that. We are reducing our emissions. And so I'm glad to also hear that what was approved in 2022 is what's going to be used to move forward. However, I do also fear that it might be too much and might hinder our opportunities in the business sector. So another issue that I didn't really hear is electric vehicles weigh a lot more than traditional vehicles. And so they tend to emit more tire pollution than a traditional vehicle. And so I think that's another very important factor since there's been a big movement towards implementing more electric vehicles. And also since the electric vehicles weigh more than traditional vehicles, they tend to damage the roads quicker, and then we have to do more road work, which then is going to add more pollution due to the construction. And I just am very concerned with the public perception that carbon emissions is causing global warming, when what we just saw here, the unpaved roads is what my gathering is the number one cause of particulate pollution. And so I think there needs to be a better education to the public than pushing political agendas, because this is brand new information to me that I learned today. And I'm very concerned that we have a narrative out there that we need to do everything in the world to abolish carbon emissions, when we're actually talking about unpaved roads here today as being the number one particulate matter in pollution. So I greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Staff, have we received any online written comments for agenda item number 5?
Madam Chair, we received one written comment for agenda item 5. It has been provided to the members of the committee in advance of the meeting for consideration, and it will be included in the formal minutes of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to recommend to adopt the draft 2023 5% particulate plan for PM10 for the West Pinal County non-attainment area?
I'll make the motion.
Matthew from Phoenix has made the motion, and I need a second.
Anu Jane from Pinal County, second motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We will now, once again, have those participating in the meeting online take part in the voice vote by turning on your cameras and unmuting your audio. Again, if you cannot or do not want to turn your cameras on, that's okay. Staff will conduct a roll call vote after the initial visual vote. So once again, members, leave your cameras on until the whole vote is done so that we can count people's names whose cameras are not on. We will now take a voice vote of those in the room and those online. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. And those who wish to abstain from the vote, say abstain. And remember, if you don't have your camera on, they'll ask you individually. Okay, staff, can you take a roll call of the members participating virtually who did not turn their camera on? Hold on a sec. Keep your cameras on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll now do of those. I'm sorry, technical problems. Of those who did not turn their camera on. Sam Brown.
Aye.
Thank you. Michelle Wilson.
Abstain.
Thank you. William Loper.
Abstain.
Thank you. One moment, please, while we tally the votes. Madam Chair, we have 19 ayes and 2 abstentions.
Thank you. So the motion is approved and will move forward in the MAG process as outlined from the calendar that Elias showed. We will now move on to item number 6, which is evaluation of the proposed PM10 certified street sweeper projects for FY 2024 CMAQ funding. And Dean Giles from MAG will be providing the presentation. This item is for information, discussion, and recommendation of a prioritized list of proposed PM10 certified street sweeper projects for FY 2024 CMAQ funding to the MAG Management Committee and to retain that prioritized list for any additional FY 2024 CMAQ funds that may become available due to closeout or additional funding received by this region. Dean?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Next slide, please. On August 1st, 2023, MAG issued a regional competitive programs call for projects for fiscal year 2024 street sweeper projects. And applications were due by September 15th. 11 applications were evaluated, requesting 4.01 million in CMAQ funding. And CMAQ is a congestion mitigation and air quality program, or CMAQ. And for the PM10 certified street sweeper projects, the current amount of funding available in the MAG TIP is approximately 1.34 million. They are anticipating additional funding available through the MAG closeout process. Next slide, please. MAG staff has conducted an evaluation of proposed street sweeper projects using the information that was provided in the applications from the MAG member agencies and applying the MAG CMAQ methodologies for street sweepers. The results of the evaluation are provided in the table that was included in the packet made available to the committee. The table provides a description of each project, the federal funds requested, and the estimated PM10 project emission reductions in kilograms per day, as well as the cost effectiveness, which is calculated by dividing the annualized cost, CMAQ cost, by the annual emission reductions. And the results are provided in the order of cost effectiveness. Next slide. So previously, on October 10th, 2023, the MAG Street Committee met to review the street sweeper applications, and no comments were received. And after today's committee meeting, it's anticipated the MAG Management Committee may recommend the prioritized list of proposed PM10 certified street sweepers for fiscal year 2024 CMAQ funding, followed by the MAG Regional Council approval on November 29th, 2023. I might also add that in addition to the action shown on the screen, the associated amendment to the MAG fiscal year 2022 to 2025 Transportation Improvement Program and Momentum 2050 regional transportation will be made to include these projects in the TIP. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any discussion from MAG members on the prioritized list?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is Megan with the City of Glendale. I was wondering if MAG staff could explain how it is evaluated when replacing a non-certified sweeper versus replacement of older certified sweepers. Is there a weighting of that cost or effectiveness in some way?
The emission reductions associated with replacing a non-certified street sweeper, the emission rates are higher because the previous sweeper doesn't include the PM10 equipment that keeps the dust down and doesn't have the ability to remove the dust on the roadway as effectively as a certified street sweeper. So the replacement of a non-certified street sweeper, which in this case, the city of Maricopa had submitted an application to replace a non-certified street sweeper. Those emission reductions are slightly higher. In the case where we're replacing an older certified street sweeper, The application requests the amount of the utilization rate of the sweeper. So we ask for about an estimate of the amount of time that the sweeper is out of service so that we can then calculate and compare what a new sweeper and remove of the silt loading on streets versus one that is down. I'll just throw out an example, 65% of the time. We had several in the in this case that are replacing an older certified street sweeper. In this case, it's the City of Phoenix, application number 1, the City of Mesa, application number 1. All of those had reported a request to replace an older certified sweeper. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions from the MAG members? Okay, prior to a motion, do we have any members of the public who wish to comment on agenda item number 6? I don't have any requests to speak for this, and neither does staff. Staff, do we have any written online comments for agenda item number 6?
Madam Chair, no written comments were received for agenda item 6.
Thank you. So now we need a motion to recommend the prioritized list of proposed PM10 certified street sweeper projects for FY 2024 CMAQ funding to the MAG Management Committee, and to retain the prioritized list for any additional FY 2024 CMAQ funds that may become available due to closeout or additional funding received by this region. Is there a motion?
This is John Sherrill with the City of Chandler. So moved.
Thank you, John. And do we have a second?
Rhonda Humble, City of Peoria.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
So we have a motion by John and a second by Rhonda. So now, once again, we're going to get to see your lovely faces. We will have those participating in the meeting online take in the voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. For those who cannot or do not want to turn on their cameras, staff will conduct a roll call vote. So again, leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote so that staff can count the people's faces and names whose cameras are not on. I will now take a voice vote of those in the room and those online. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Those opposed say nay. And those who wish to abstain from the vote, say abstain. And if you don't have your camera on, I'll get to you just a sec. Okay. Staff, can you take a roll call of the members participating virtually who did not turn on their cameras? Takes a little minute while they count. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll now take a roll call vote of those who do not turn their cameras on. Sam Brown.
Aye.
Thank you. Michelle Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. William Loper.
Abstain.
Thank you. One moment, please. Madam Chair, we have 21 ayes and 1 abstention.
Thank you. So that motion passes and we'll move forward to the MAG Management Committee for their vote. All right, we're on to item number 7. EPA finding a failure to submit state implementation plans for non-attainment areas classified as moderate for the 2015 ozone standard. And Matt Poppin from MAG will have a presentation for that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Just wanted to take some time to update you on this latest action by EPA. It wasn't unexpected. We knew it was coming, but wanted to give you an update on it. So on October 13th, EPA did find for 11 states, 16 non-attainment areas that they failed to submit a moderate area state implementation plan by the due date, which was January 1st, 2023. And the Maricopa non-attainment area is one of those areas included in that notice. Some of the areas other states included are California, Connecticut, Illinois, New Jersey, Nevada, Texas, and Wisconsin. So this is really a national issue that a lot of areas are grappling with. This notice was published, I should say, October 18th with an effective date of November 17th. So that is when this notice becomes legally binding, is November 17th. And this notice does trigger some Clean Air Act deadlines and what we call a sanctions clock. If a plan to address the moderate area is not submitted by these clock deadlines, within 18 months, if a complete plan is not submitted, then what is known as offset sanctions for industry are theoretically implemented by the EPA. That's a 2-to-1 offset. So for every 1 ton of emissions that are emitted into the air, they have to offset those emissions by 2 tons. And then if the submission is not corrected within 24 months, EPA could sanction the highway funds. So we know this is a challenge. We've talked quite a bit about the challenge that ozone is, and this is a step in the process. So we're going to be working to put together a plan that turns off those sanctions clocks. That's going to be our #1 priority as we continue to move forward. And I do just want to mention that the leadership of MAG through Mayor Kate Gallego and Maricopa County Board of Supervisors Chairman Clint Hittman led a great discussion with the deputy administrator. So way up in EPA, the deputy administrator for air and radiation back in September to really highlight the challenges that this region faced. They did a great job in highlighting, I think, what we know to be some of our biggest challenges. One of our biggest is that 80% of the ozone that impacts our region comes from either natural sources or comes from sources outside of our control. So from neighboring states or from international emissions. So there's only 20% that is controllable from man-made sources within Arizona. I think the other challenge that they did a great job identifying is that we know local emissions of the precursors to ozone, so volatile organic compounds and nitrogen dioxides, those emissions to continue to decrease in our non-attainment area, those local emissions, but ozone concentrations have risen. And this disconnect has kind of happened since about 2017, 2018. So we really need to dig in to understand why that disconnect is occurring, why we are no longer seeing benefits in ozone concentrations with the reductions of local emissions. And so once we have better answers to that question, both from EPA and from more research that is needed, that will really help us decide what type of plan we put together to help turn off those sanctions clocks. I would say the other things that we really emphasize to EPA is that this region is really a growing, vital economic hub of some of the solutions to ozone issues that are out there with the chip manufacturing and the battery manufacturing that is present in this region. This region is a solution to the problems as opposed to a hindrance to the ozone problems. So we really encouraged EPA not to, as the phrase goes, sanction the solution. Don't put sanctions on these economic businesses that are really a key contributor to helping us meet ozone standards in the future. So that's just an update we wanted to provide, and more is to come. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them at this time.
Thank you, Matt, very much. Any comments from the MAG members online or in the room? I just want to thank MAG staff. We've been kind of hit rolling with all of these things with both West Pinal and Ozone, and as the technical advisory committee, and your expertise and those that you have on your staff, just working really hard. And I know it's a big lift, and I just want to tell you that we appreciate your efforts to help us meet attainment and have those discussions. And we appreciate the mayor and members of those groups having those discussions at the EPA. And I know that they also sent, the state legislature sent a letter as well to EPA describing some of our challenges. So we appreciate those efforts. All right, now we're on to item number 8, the Valley Metro 2023 Transportation Demand Management Survey results. And Suzanne Nordman from Valley Metro and Kathy DeBoer from West Group Research will be doing the presentation.
Hello, everybody. Abby Cooksey Williams sends her regards to the group. I'm one of the program coordinators on Abby's Commute Solutions team, and we support Valley employers and transportation coordinators in the implementation of their travel reduction programs, or TRPs. So every year, as part of the grant agreement with our partners, we contract with West Group to conduct an annual survey. The survey measures shifts in commute modes, and it also examines opinions of Valley residents about alternative modes and schedules, air quality, and traffic to determine marketing strategies, and also to measure awareness and effectiveness of programs and services. We appreciate the opportunity to share the survey data with you today, so I'm happy to turn it over to Kathy DeBoer to share some highlights from the overall results.
Great. Thank you, Susan. Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you again for inviting me to present these results. We will just go ahead and jump right in. Next slide, please. The survey, as mentioned, we conduct every year in the spring. We complete 402 interviews this year, and it is a combination of telephone and online surveys. We work toward a majority of the sample being employed because we are looking at commute behaviors, but we also include a portion of the population that is not employed so that we can look at the region as a whole and gauge their awareness of other measures and campaigns as well. And we try to split the sample fairly evenly between males and females. We also monitor age and income and other variables to make sure that we have a representative sample of residents within Maricopa County. We compare the results to historical data when we have data going all the way back to 1990, I believe, 1989. And we typically don't show you that far back, but we do have a very wealthy and robust data set to compare results to. Next slide. We begin the survey with just capturing what residents feel are the major issues facing the Valley. This is the list of the top total mentions, and you'll see that we do net up the responses that are related to air quality, transportation, and growth. And so you see that number has gone up this year. We also have economy and unemployment. Other at the top, along with water conservation. You can see that air quality, water conservation, homelessness, and politics increased significantly in 2023, with things just more returning to a more normal perspective on what is going on. The concerns over COVID-19, which obviously dominated things in 2020 and 2021, now have dropped almost down to zero. Next slide. Breaking apart the issues related to air quality, transportation, and growth, you can see growth management. Growth management is at 10%, congestion is at 10%, and road construction did go up slightly this year. And then you can see the net in transportation and transit mentions at 5%. Next slide, please. We also asked folks to identify for this, first of all, what the valley traffic congestion is for the valley as a whole. Is it a big, moderate, small problem? And then we asked them then to personally say how big of a problem, if at all, the congestion is for them personally. And you can see that for the most part, it has held very steady over the last 5 years. The valley traffic congestion as a whole has been right around the high 80s, low 90s marker. And that after 2020, interestingly, we had a big drop, not surprisingly, for personal traffic congestion because people were staying home more in 2020. But that number has stayed down at that 50% mark and hasn't returned. So there have been some adaptations post-COVID where folks are, they've either moved to a different location or they are able to work from home more. But fewer residents personally say they are experiencing traffic congestion as a bigger or moderate problem for them. Perception of air quality problems, again, 84% see air quality as a significant problem, big or moderate. It dropped slightly in 2020, but then bounced back up to where we see most constantly. Next slide. Advertising awareness. The overall recall of Valley Metro advertising is right around the 20 to 25% mark. And then also we look at the specific ad recall when we asked them specifically if they have seen online advertising that encourages drivers to visit the sharedride.com. And that number continues to slowly increase as the focus and the push of some of the campaign has gone more online than more traditional advertising routes. But regardless of where they are seeing it, residents in general support the need for advertising and feel that they have very favorable or somewhat favorable perceptions when they see advertising that encourages folks to use an alternate mode instead of driving alone. Next slide. We look at the mode of travel. Again, this is among the employed part of the respondents. We look at it in two ways. One is the mode of travel as percent of people, and the other is the percentage of trips. So as percent of people, obviously people can use multiple modes. So these numbers across do not they add to more than 100% because people will drive alone one day a week and then take an alternate mode multiple days a week or vice versa. The thing to notice there is that the single occupant levels in 2023 have increased back up to pre-COVID levels of being in the low 80s. But similarly, the alternate mode usage continues to remain higher than pre-COVID. So it does mean that people have returned to driving alone, at least on a part-time basis, but they haven't completely reversed back to using that as a sole method of travel, but they are combining it with other alternate modes. And so we'll see as we move forward, but that we are sitting at 60% using some form of alternate mode, and it used to be 40 to 45% were numbers that we would get very excited about. So there have been some definite shifts since COVID. Next slide, please. This one really shows you we've got data going back to 1994. But you can see that in that box there, the most significant shift there is that increase in some alternate mode usage. The big jump was to when the always alternate mode, of course, 2020, that's not surprising. And that has slowly tapered down from 40 to 43 to 38. And now this year it was more down to a normal 17% of people who only use an alternate mode. But the percent using some in that light gray bar, that number is higher than we've ever seen it. If we go back to 2008, when we had the economy was challenging and there were lots of similar challenges from an economic standpoint, we had a 41% of folks that were using some alternate mode. But this year we are hanging in there at a much higher percentage than we have seen in the past 10 plus years. Next slide, please. The other way to look at it is to look at the percent of trips. So these add up to 100%. So a person makes 5 trips a week and 4 are alternate mode, and 1 is single occupant vehicle, it adds up to the five trips. So in this case, we can see that again, the total single occupant vehicle was up compared to 2020 and 21, sitting at 60%, but that's still lower than the 69% and higher that we had seen previous to 2019. And this year, yes, it did. The alternate mode again dropped from 2020 and 2021 down to 40% this year, but that is up from the 30% that we were typically seeing prior to COVID. And so the increases were coming in some increased usage of bus and transit. And even while telecommuting and telework is down from the 40% we saw during COVID at 22%, that is still more than double of the 9% that we realized and were measuring from 2019 and before. Next slide. This looks at large versus small organizations, because we know the large organizations are impacted by the trip reduction program. So that includes businesses that have 50 or more employees, and the smaller are those with fewer than 50 employees. And historically, we always see more alternate mode usage among larger companies. They usually have more flexibility along with more employees compared to the small. And we did see shifts in both going through COVID, but as we've come out on the backside of things, we still have been able to hang in there at an alternate mode usage at 64%. And you can see back in 2019, that was at 45%. So even while that has dropped, it is still very high among large organizations and small as well. We see that it was up at 59% in 2020, and we're at a similar percentage for this year. So the small businesses have, been able to maintain and probably change some policies and maybe the way they approach their business at a more sustainable level. Next slide. The reasons for using an alternate mode: convenience and the company policies allowing them to work from home. And then also gas. So we are hitting some of this. This was done in April and May for data collection. So gas prices were at the higher end of what they've been so far this year. And so, and we've learned that in the past, that as we have seen gas prices go up and down over time, that definitely is directly correlated to the amount of alternate modes that people are using. Next slide. Awareness of Valley Metro online matching for Share the Ride. That number is down this year, but folks are continuing to be highly likely to consider an online matching system. So there's definitely an opportunity there to boost the awareness of the population, because folks are looking for those options. Next slide. We ask about the employer involvement in promoting alternate mode usage. So we ask folks if they are aware if their employer has a transportation coordinator, or if their employer offers alternate mode resources, or if they encourage alternate mode usage. And as we've always seen in the past, that more large companies than small companies provide those resources. And we've looked at it and watched the number aware of those that their employer has a transportation coordinator decrease. But we do feel that it's not necessarily a reflection of the efforts that are being done, but just because fewer folks are on site. The way things are distributed now are much more digital and less personal. So it is possible that folks at these larger organizations don't know that there's someone called a transportation coordinator who's out there distributing the information. But the good news is that they are seeing the information, and they are having access to resources and are being encouraged to use an alternate mode. Next slide. When asked, well, how can your employer encourage you? As we've seen always in the past, the best incentive is a carrot dangling in front of you. So an incentive or rewards are what people are looking for that carpool assistance, and then just continuing to hold in high regard telecommuting or any subsidies that can be provided for transit passes or car or van pool. Next slide. Again, carpool matching information is the most desired information that they're looking for. So that's, again, there's a good opportunity because you have share the rides to dovetail those resources in so that employers can make sure that their employees understand how to take advantage of that option for them. And then there's specifically, others are looking for information on transit. And others are feeling that we had a slight bump this year of people saying, well, I'm getting the information I need. Next slide. You can save money was the message that most stood out to residents when we asked them what's most likely to encourage you to use an alternate mode in the future. 64% mentioned that that was the one most likely. And what is different, where you can see that lines up with the historical, but what's different is that the percent choosing reducing air pollution, saving time, improving the environment, reducing your carbon footprint, all of those mentions or selections as that of a highly motivating message decline this year. So we can see that the economy challenges with just the struggling economy in general, plus the price of gas, that saving money is definitely a strong motivator for encouraging folks to try those alternate modes, and hence the reason they would like incentives, hence the reason why they would like some also some reimbursement or subsidies to help them use those alternate modes. Next slide. So overall, as we said, a legacy of the COVID pandemic is seemingly permanent. We're seeing an increase in working from home, at least part-time. The Valley Metro, when we went through COVID, it started, the stay-at-home order came just before we went into the field. And we had many clients who just, pulled the plug on their research just because we weren't sure what was going to happen. But we talked it through and felt that this was an important thing to keep track of and to measure. So we continued to do this study through COVID, really providing some tremendous insights into the work from home perspective and how it was being used here in the Valley. And we can see that, yes, we've decreased, that organizations, are having folks come back to work, but there is a commitment to continuing offering work from home. And so as we look forward, we don't expect to see as much change as we've seen in the last couple of years, but the encouraging finding is that staying power and helping reduce those trips so people can work at home. Next slide. We're also seeing a rebound in public transit usage. And while I know that the total numbers in terms of bus and transit measured on the Valley Metro side may not be showing that, which probably means people aren't using it with the frequency maybe they did in the past, but at least in terms of the number of people who are at least using it on a semi basis, whether it's to go to special events or whether it's maybe a once or twice a week thing as opposed to full time. We at least are seeing a return that some people are starting to incorporate public transit back into their commute trips. Next slide. So again, higher alternate mode overall, not just to telecommuting. We're seeing that overall alternate mode is at a higher level than years prior to 2020, but again, lower during the pandemic. But we are encouraged to see that that usage of sometime usage of an alternate mode is at one of the highest levels ever. And as mentioned, the higher prices by inflation and high gas prices is causing people to look at their commute modes as a possible way to save money. Next slide. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Thank you. Are there any questions from MAG members for Valley Metro or West Group Research? Oh, I have one from, go ahead.
I have one comment to Valley Metro. Actually, I'm frequent bus rider. I prefer to using bus, but especially local bus, it's very inconvenient because I don't know when the bus will arrive at the specific stop. And in my case, I try to wait for local bus. I need to wait 2 hours because I don't know when the bus will arrive. So because of this, the trauma on waiting for the bus long time. So, I don't want to use, local bus, especially, the local bus because I don't know when I get the bus. Actually, I was from South Korea. South Korea has well-developed bus, the subway system, public transit system. So all bus has, GPS. So the bus provides, every stop also has, the information when the bus will arrive, how long it will take, to get the bus, arrive at that specific stop. This is very convenient. I'm sure, if we also have this kind of system, more people will, use this bus, local bus. I also prefer to use, bus if we can get that kind of information on real time. And also, in South Korea, there is a mobile app. This mobile app is very convenient, to what time the bus will arrive, specific time, and what time the subway arrive, and also, what is the fast way to get the bus and also subway system. So if we also have this kind of system, maybe more and more people will use, transit bus. Okay. Thank you.
If I can go ahead and thank you for the feedback and also address it. You gave me the perfect segue. Valley Metro does have an app. It's the Valley Metro app, and people can download it onto their smartphones. It does show the locations of buses and can provide the kind of information that you mentioned was available in South Korea. So there is an app for that. There are also posted signs at the different bus stops and whatnot with phone numbers that you can call for upcoming arrivals. So I felt the same way. I know when I first started using transit, it was the same thing. And we were thrilled when the Valley Metro app was unveiled so that people could better plan their trips and also see where the bus and light rails, I use it to track the light rail when those rides are coming. So hopefully that helps address that for you.
I know the phone number I can contact, but it's not easy to contact. To get the specific information.
Yeah, I think that the app is easy. In my personal opinion, I think the app is easier to use.
Yeah, and also, the bus stop, if there is a specific, the information can be available, what time the bus will arrive, how long we have to wait to get the next bus, that would be very convenient for bus.
Yep. And that is also in the app. You can also look at schedules so that if it's not something that you're catching a ride immediately, you can also look at the schedules.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions, because I don't think I knew there was an app. So I appreciate.
There is one.
Any other questions or comments on this? We thank you very much for your hard work and getting this research and helping us determine this ridership. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Our next item is a request for future agenda items, and our next committee meeting has tentatively been scheduled for Thursday, November 30th, 2023. Are there any requests from the membership for an item on the future agenda? Nothing in the chat. I would just I know that in past times, just can't remember the last time we've had them, but maybe this is a good opportunity to invite Maricopa County to talk about their Clean Air, Make More, and how their campaign is working for outreach and education about several of these topics that we've talked about today, and how a lot of the municipalities in the region, I can speak for town of Queen Creek, how we utilize that information quite a lot to outreach to our residents And it doesn't have to be at the November if they're not ready, but in a future agenda item when they're ready, I think that might be helpful. Otherwise, our business is now concluded and I just need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved, Matthew Phoenix.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you all.